Welcome back to another edition of Just Talking. She is Jourdan Black. She is tan. I am Tom Hannifan. I am pale. I had to operate my ring lights as such to give me a little bit more color for those of you watching this on YouTube. But if you're listening on audio only, just imagine me as having a great summer tan and rivaling Jourdan. Jourdan, NFL stuff continues, and I'm freaking dying for the season to start. I was excited to see Hard Knocks confirmed for the New York Jets. That was
Yeah.
great. I think that's going to be a disaster from a PR standpoint. I think it's going to be fabulously entertaining. And in the meantime, it's just a matter of who can shoot their mouth off quickest on our way to the NFL season. That brings us to our first point. San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel. Now, as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I took immense glee in him hanging up on CBS radio in an interview with Zach Gelb. Shout out to Zach Gelb. He is friendly. We're friendly with each other. I've been on his show. I think the world of him. And I think Zach handled it perfectly. The entire circumstance shouted to me that Deebo has whined about this situation, having lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC title game far too much. And he's sick of hearing of it to the point that he was unprofessional and hung up on a live radio interview. What was your takeaway from Deebo's actions?
I think I have answer your first thing. You know what I will say, Tom, the joy of being a female is we can fake tan. So a shout out to my at home, moisturizing tan.
It's not that
But
I can't, it's I elect not to, or I'm
no,
too lazy
right.
to
We
do
would
so.
we would question you if you did. As far as Hard Knocks, you don't say no to Hard Knocks, right?
Of course
Okay,
not.
but back to Deebo. I feel like I probably have a really different opinion. Not because I think he should have hung up, because he should have been more professional, but because this story is done and I'm looking at it from a PR perspective. Zach, of course, he wanted 15 minutes with him. When you're thinking from our side of a sports broadcasting thing, we are doing it right now. We've scheduled out a show with a certain amount of minutes and a certain amount of segments. And so he was like, I had 15 minutes with Deebo. I only got 5. What are we going to do?
On
We
live
tossed a break.
radio.
On live radio. But here is where my head goes immediately. And I know that this is because I'm now on the other side of the business in comms. I know that what happened was almost last year. We're talking last season. So last athletic year, if you will. And the storyline they've killed in this organization. They're like, if somebody brings this up to you, you got to stop. You're done. Stop talking about it. We have heard it. Everyone's been asking you so many questions. And what Zach did, as any journalist will do, and any kind of commentator on radio or the internet, they're going to keep asking the question. They want the soundbite, right? He was trying to get a soundbite, as journalists so often do. And Deebo kind of did probably what the Niners organization prepped him to do. And so my kind of standpoint on this is they gave him talking points and they said, let's look ahead to next season. We'll see what happens when we go to Philly. We'll see what happens when we get there, looking forward. Was he well-spoken in it? Was he, as articulate as he could have been? Was he giving him long answers? No. But was he answering to the way that he was given talking points? I think so. And I think he was probably doing what he was told, because at this point, what else is there to say? He already had the temper tantrum. He already aired it out. He already talked about it so much. So what was he going to do? Just keep ragging on him? And I think we know the PR person was right there. She got right on the phone.
Yes.
She was like, we're going to practice. She's like, you're done. Now, I think the hang up was all on him. We know he has a temper, right?
Yeah. That was clear.
We
I
know
agree with you.
He can get boiled up, right? But I also think they told him, stop.
I agree with you that those were clearly talking points, but there's a way to do it, and that you start giving shorter and shorter answers. And it's like, hey, I've talked about it, that we're disappointed we lost that, but we're on to next season. Like you wrap it up that quickly, and it's a, subtle thing to the interviewer of like, hey, I'm not going to talk much more about this. Go to something else and I will talk about it. But that's how you handle those situations. I think he got salty. I think he got emotional, to your point. He has a bit of a temper. Here's what I took away from this, and I take a lot of glee in this as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, because I heard this through the entire offseason now, that if Brock Purdy hadn't gotten hurt, if they'd had a third quarterback, if Josh Johnson hadn't been, completely unprepared to go into that game, it's like, well, ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, right? Here's the fact of the matter. The Philadelphia Eagles injured their two quarterbacks, not maliciously, but injured their first two available quarterbacks and wound up winning the football game. Last I checked, it is not illegal to injure a player as long as you don't do it with malice, with intent, with a premeditated assault of some kind. The Philadelphia Eagles had a task and they destroyed the quarterbacks of San Francisco and they won the game. And that was a big factor in it. Yes, can you look back and be like, man, if Brock Purdy wasn't touched the entire game, oh my God, of course the 49ers would have won. Well, yeah, if Jalen Hurts never gets even grazed by a defender in the Super Bowl, the Eagles probably beat the Chiefs and win the Super Bowl. But these ifs, I think this is what's gotten Deebo Samuel in trouble because he's whined so much publicly. You know that it's not just the media giving him flack, it's his teammates being like, yo, dude, shut up. It's other players within the league, Eagles players as well, but other players being like, dude, this is sour grapes. You got to let it go because it's all a hypothetical. It's what could have happened versus what actually happened. That's what drives me nuts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think probably the argument here is not like what he said wasn't wrong, right? Like we're not the double digits thing and the Brock Purdy of it all and the injuries, right? Like the fact of the matter, Eagles won, and you spoke it like a true Eagles fan, but like a sports fan, right? We watched the game. We know what happened. So saying a game that happened in the past and talking about like what could have happened is so silly. Like it, but I think what we're arguing is like, should he have handled this situation better? Yeah, but was he probably given some guidance and some strategy from his PR and comms department and the organization? I also think that's the case too. So we're probably like talking about two different things. And I think also he's probably gotten so much flack from this for months, and he's trying to nip it in the bud because it's been aired out so much, and he started it, right? He started it, and he's like, look what I got myself into.
The best part is that San Francisco plays in Philadelphia on December 3rd, and Philadelphia Eagles fans, they know how to needle you. And
so what's it gonna be like?
I really hope I'm available to attend that game and I can get tickets because I'll be right there with them. Speaking of things that, everybody is looking forward to for next season, it's not even necessarily next season. It's next NFL draft. The 2024 NFL draft, already most people are saying that USC quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams will be the number one overall pick if he is coming out next season. I believe he is. But this has been tagged as, quote, cave for Caleb. In your opinion, which teams should be caving for Caleb Williams?
I have three that I've thought about thoroughly, and I'm sure probably some of ours overlap. And then there's probably like 7 that realistically should, could, will, who knows. But the 3 that come to mind are the Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Falcons. Cardinals and Raiders are kind of in a similar situation, right? Like they need someone to change the paradigm. To have Caleb Williams is going to be a franchise changing quarterback, and he can do that for the Falcons too. But someone to help them gain ground and make waves in their division. The division is so competitive, and he can do that for them. What's interesting with both of these teams, and I'll start with the Cardinals, despite what they're saying in Arizona, the relationship between Kyler and the organization, the front office, it is all but broken. Now, it was funny because I was talking to Ed Smith, who's also on the Believe Network, but does a weekly radio show in Arizona. He was like, they're hugging, they're saying all the right things, but I think what they're going to do is cave for Caleb, quote unquote, because I see this organization day in, day out, and it's not good. Things are not good there. So he wants out, they want out, and it seems like the right fit there. Same kind of thing for the Raiders, right? Like no one we had Carr, and it was like no one really bought in. And then they've got Jimmy G, but he's still coming off that injury. So like you could kind of put Caleb into the same bullet points there. And then the Falcons, it's just like, we believe in Desmond Ridder. Was our 3rd pick. We're not going to have anyone compete against him. We love him. We're like lifting him up, but like we have no competition, which is just such an interesting way to go about it. But they have really good picks around him. And so they're kind of a good quarterback away from being really solid. And it was just a few years ago that they were there. I mean, I'm looking at the year. It's like not that long ago that they were in the Super Bowl. So with Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, you kind of got the pieces, and then you have like this run first offense with Caleb Williams being so electric. Arthur Smith's offense might be a good fit. So kind of a three-pronged approach to my list of choices.
I like your picks. I think first of all, the Cardinals have the issue of Kyler Murray's contract, and then it's like who's going to want to take that, right? Vegas makes a lot of sense to me because you've got Jimmy G, and Jimmy G is already an injury concern for this team.
Yeah.
However, there is an argument to be made, and I don't mean to be the speculative conspiracy theory type or anything, but the league would love to see the Las Vegas market have a star player there. And that's nothing against Derek Carr or even Devontae Adams, but I think they would love to see that marketplace explode. And if you put the number one overall pick there, especially a quarterback, a guy in Caleb Williams who's drawing comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, which I think is unfair to put on a kid, but we'll see how he does. Man, that could be a real boon for the league. I think the Falcons also make a ton of sense to the points you were just making. I also think staying within that same division, this Buccaneers team is going to be rough this year.
Yeah.
And I see a world where they not cave for Caleb, but they're just some bad Bucks. And they just wind up in that situation because it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. And neither of those guys inspire a lot of confidence. The receiving core is aging. Yes, you have Mike Evans, and yes, you have Chris Godwin, but it's just not the same Buccaneers team that Tom Brady was navigating that went to a Super Bowl. They seem like they've regressed. And also another one I throw out there is a dark horse because they also regressed last year. If things go worse, the LA Rams. And naturally, the USC guy in Los Angeles would make a ton of sense. But I think there's a bunch of teams around the league. Obviously, the Texans got their guy for now and CJ Stroud. Atlanta, Desmond Ridder, it feels a lot like what Jalen Hurts went through, not this past season, but the season before. It was kind of a prove-it year. Hey, maybe you can do this, but we got to see you do it. I'm trying to think if there's any other teams around the league. Maybe the Washington Commanders, if things go really, really bad for them with Sam Howell.
Yeah. It's like yet to be seen. I mean, all of this is speculatory for us, but it's fun nonetheless. It's interesting that you brought up the Rams because I think I read that in the offseason they tried to trade Matthew Stafford. So that is an option. And then like you kind of have your hometown guy, if you will, with having him in Southern California. So I like that one that I hadn't thought about. One thing you were saying when you were comparing him to Patrick Mahomes is I read this quote and it was like, he is Patrick Mahomes. And we didn't know Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes when he was drafted in 2017. And then I think the scout took it even further and was like, so much so that teams are going to tank for him, which leads us into this conversation that we're already having. And leads us into just how are we navigating the tanking problem, if you even see it as a problem?
It is a problem because this is what messed up the entire Miami Dolphins organization a few years ago, why Brian Flores went to court with them and was successful. So the point I wanted to bring up with you, how does the league handle this in terms of a competition standpoint? Because there are going to be teams that are going to be like, we should lose as many games as we can.
It reminds me of last week, Tom, when we were like, teams need to follow the rules. Like we're squares, like
the gambling stuff.
Yeah. So last week we were talking about how players need to essentially not gamble during the season and follow the rules. Those are the rules that teams set in place. And we were like, yes, follow those rules. We are squares. Rules are rules, and you're an employee. And it kind of reminds me of that because I'm of the mindset that like you shouldn't reward like losing / forcing losing. And so I read a really interesting article and I'm pulling it up and I want to give credit where credit is due. Stuart Otto from Back Sports page. His proposal was the first 10 picks of the NFL draft would be reordered based on the outcome of their final regular season game. All of the teams in the top 10 who won their week 18 game will be given top priority in the NFL draft. And then of those teams, they'll determine the draft order based on the length of their winning streaks to end the season. It's a little convoluted, so I have an idea. But he goes on to say, contrary, the teams in the top 10 who lost in week 18 will be repositioned after the teams who won, and then the order will be determined based on season record. And so something along the lines of the basic idea is promote winning, not losing, right? And if you did something like that, and then you had like the top 10 teams, which, you know, the numbers are interesting, right? Because it's how are we going to get 10 teams? And
yeah, there's a lot of math. Yeah,
there's a lot of math here. I was like reading it and I was like, journalism, math, not going hand in hand. But what if they did something like other leagues do with a lottery, and you're also, NFL likes money. You're getting some TV money if you do a lottery of sorts. The anti promoting winning idea is that you're perpetuating really good organizations and allowing them to keep being really good. But like, I mean, isn't that sport?
Imagine if you flipped it, like, and this will never happen, but if the Chiefs had the number one overall pick this upcoming
Right.
year, well, they don't need a quarterback. So all of a sudden, the value of certain positions goes down, and it's like, oh man, we really need a left tackle. They go get a left tackle all of a sudden, and they're even better than they were last year. But that's never a given. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I think the league needs to iron out on that front, or else you're going to run into a similar Stephen Ross-esque situation. And I always like the English Premier League model where you have every game meaning something, relegation. And I know the NFL is big enough to do that, but I don't know. Hopefully there's a way to do this, but Caleb Williams will be getting paid a lot of money to play football somewhere next
year. This is true. He probably already is.
Probably doing it right now. NIL in Southern California, he's doing just fine.
Just fine.
Speaking of money, that brings us to Juke or Tackle. This is our buy or sell segment. Juke means you sell it. Tackle means you buy it. Our first one brings me to my money transition. Saquon Barkley will play week 1 for the New York Giants. Juke or tackle?
I am tackling this one. I don't see a world in which Saquon is not with the Giants this season. This is a negotiating tactic, right? They still have 4 days from the time that
Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yep. Yeah. From the time this airs, right? Yeah. So you do that math. Tom, thank you. But he deserves to get paid. So if the storyline is whether or not he should get a bigger contract, I'm tackling that. But the question is, will he play in week 1? I think the answer is yes, I will tackle that. The Giants haven't had a winning record over his career with them, but they've gotten exponentially better with him. And you have to pay the guy. But, they're going back and forth, and it's yet to be seen which side is going to acquiesce, because he does not want that franchise tag.
Yeah, they slapped the franchise tag on him when his rookie deal expired. The concerns are he missed so much time 2 years ago that they feel maybe he's damaged goods at this point. But last year he was 3rd in the league in rushing, bounced back. And if anything, the Giants are getting better. They have had a terrible offensive line in front of him for a while. As a Penn State fan, I know a lot of people saw what he did in college. There's a very different game. And he didn't even have the best offensive lines at Penn State, but he was the best athlete on the field every single time. He is usually the best athlete on the field when he plays in the NFL, but it's not the same game. You cannot expect him to do what he did in college behind bad NFL offensive lines. So I am going to tackle this, that he will be playing for the Giants, because also it's a bad idea in the NFL, a la Le'Veon Bell, to sit out entirely and hope that somebody puts a flyer on you, because it becomes a black mark on your record. Staying within the NFC East, and I did write this point, the Philadelphia Eagles will return to the Super Bowl. Buy or sell?
Is it safe to say that anything Philadelphia Eagles related comes from the hand of Tom?
Yes, I did.
Yes,
I did write this Juke or tackle piece. Yes.
You'll be happy to know that I'm tackling it, because you know this. They've only gotten better, adding Swift, Rashad Penny, and then what about like the Georgia Eagles, or what was it that they changed the
Philadelphia Bulldogs? Yes, we're doing well drafting Georgia players.
I mean, if that doesn't make you that much better, I don't know what does. Jalen Carter,
Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis from last year, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they're just getting better. I don't see anyone standing in their way. Sorry, Deebo. No. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, I don't see another team getting in their way in the NFC. So I'm tackling the Eagles.
Yeah, I am
You're
tackling it as
welcome.
well. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying not to be biased on this one, but I agree with all the points you just made. My only concern as a pessimistic, realistic Eagles fan is the health of the offensive line. Lane Johnson is considerably older at this point, in and out of the lineup usually, but when he's in there, he is fantastic. Jason Kelsey is also getting up in the years, but when he's in there, he's fantastic. And that was arguably the best offensive line in football. As long as they stay healthy, and as long as they keep Jalen Hurts healthy, there's a very strong chance they're back in the Super Bowl. Last but not least, a former NFC East player, former New York Giant, now Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, Kadarius Toney. His social media was hacked. Juke or tackle?
This is the oldest trick in the book. Oh, sorry, I got hacked. I'm juking this one. He did not
Yeah.
get hacked. It sounded exactly like him. He's calling out the Giants. Like, I mean, it's everything that he's written all of this exactly before. Like none of it made sense, but it made perfect sense, right? He is so supremely talented, injuries aside, but there's a reason he didn't see the field in the Giants organization, right? And also there were so many reasons why everyone was like, there are red flags around this guy when he was getting ready to get drafted. We saw that in his college career. So Juke in this one, he was not hacked. Like, yeah, sorry, like I was hacked, but the only things I interacted with were to call out Giants fans. Like, what?
Yeah, I found it very, very targeted and specific. Listen, it's impossible to tell whether or not he was or was not. However, I find it highly unlikely that he was hacked and then proceeded to leave voice messages. Voice messages. When people's accounts get hacked, typically it's to sell PlayStation 5s or something like
No,
that.
right,
It's
right.
not to leave very specific voice messages. So I am juking this one. I don't know if I buy Kadarius Toney's social media getting hacked. So, I appreciate the effort, at least on his part. And that's what this fall part of the year is all about, Jordan, is it's effort. It's effort on our part
Entertaining.
to put together a show because we're like, I'm just dying for training camp to start, which starts
Yeah.
in about a week plus for a lot of teams. And then I'm just dying for the preseason to start, and I'm dying for the regular season to be back. It's about effort.
You know that it's pulling for stories when like random football adjacent / social stories like end up in the New York Post because like this Kadarius Toney story was there. And I'm like, when we are searching for sports stories in the New York Post, like we have a problem because that's where we're finding like cultural news and like what Kim Kardashian is doing. So like, come on, it is time. We're like, how many days out are we? We need like
We're
a running.
close. We're
We
close.
need
The
a
time we're
countdown on the
recording this,
future.
yeah, we're close. We'll see if our
Yeah.
production guy can throw that in there. Thank
Yeah.
you all so much for joining us. She is Jourdan Black. I'm Tom Hannifan. We're just talking. Enjoy your NFL purgatory.